welcome. You're watching NDTV. I'm Aditi Bhardwaj, and a very happy new year to our viewers who are watching us right now. How did you spend it? Well, we'll more have lined up on this news edition. So let's take a look at the top headlines we're tracking at this hour. Washington sanctions Iranian and Russian entities, accusing them of attempting to interfere in 2024 presidential elections, alleges entities aimed to stoke socio-political tensions and influence US electorate. Ukraine Defense Forces have shared a footage of sea drone downing a Russian Mi-8 helicopter off Crimea in first reported successful C-2 air strike of its kind in ongoing war. US President-elect Trump snipes at House Democrats, urges Republicans to be smart and tough in the face of potential Democratic efforts to delay confirmation of Trump 2.0 nominees. In a first for South Korea, court issues arrest warrant against impeached South Korean President Yoon. Five years on, China and WHO jostle over COVID transparency. International Health Organization says China yet to share data while Beijing claims sharing all information without holding back, quote-unquote, anything. And from Mumbai to London and Kenya to Hong Kong, world welcomes 2025 with big cheers. Now, thousands of people led by students rallied in Bangladesh's Dhaka, calling for the prosecution of ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and those responsible for hundreds of deaths in a mass uprising against her government in July. The anti-discrimination student movement organized what they call a march for unity at the central Shahid Minar, a national monument in Dhaka. Protesters chanted slogans calling for Hasina's trial and the banning of her. Awami League Party is also one of the demands that the student protesters are raising against her. Hasina fled to India on August 5, remember, after weeks of violence in which authorities say hundreds of people were killed and thousands more were injured on orders of her government. The uprising ended the 15-year rule of the country's longest-serving prime minister, who began a fourth consecutive term in January following an election boycotted by the major opposition parties. Chinese President Xi Jinping has declared that no one can stop China's reunification with Taiwan, a big statement coming in. In a televised New Year's speech, Xi reiterated his stance, calling the people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait one family and warning pro-independence forces both within Taiwan and abroad. This comes as Beijing continues its military activities near Taiwan, with warships and planes conducting frequent operations in the region. Taiwan, which rejects Beijing's sovereignty claims, insists its future can only be decided by its own people. Tensions remain high, especially after Taiwan elected a new president in May, whom Beijing labels a separatist. The year also saw large-scale Chinese war games around Taiwan, while US arms sales to the island have added to the strain between Washington and Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping said that China's economy is on course to expand by 5% in 2025, meeting official growth targets and rebutting concerns that Donald Trump's incoming US administration will harm Beijing's prospects in the new year. Xi sought to allay fears that the world's second-largest economy would falter over the next 12 months after the government battled to prevent a slide towards recession during 2024. Xi said China's economy was overall stable and progressing. He said risks in key areas were effectively addressed while employment and prices remained steady.
当前经济运行面临一些新情况，有外部环境不确定性的挑战，有新旧动能转换的压力，但这些经过努力是可以克服的。我们从来都是在风雨洗礼中成长，在历经考验中壮大，大家要充满信心。
Now, China has denied its involvement in the hacking of several US Treasury Department workstations. The agency accused Chinese hackers of remotely accessing workstations and unclassified documents after compromising a third-party software service provider. Remember, the US Treasury Department did not provide details on how many workstations had been accessed or what sort of documents the hackers may have obtained.
对于此类缺乏证据的无端指控，我们已经多次表明了立场。中方一贯反对各种形式的黑客攻击，我们更反对出于政治目的散布针对中国的虚假信息。
Israel's ambassador to the United Nations has issued what he called a final warning to Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi militants to halt missile attacks on Israel. Ambassador Danny Danon has said that Houthis risk the same miserable fate as Hamas, Hezbollah and Syria's Bashar al-Assad if they persisted. Danon also warned Tehran that Israel has the ability to strike any target in the Middle East, including in Iran. He added that Israel would not tolerate attacks by Iranian proxies. Turkey's president has vowed to provide Syria with any support necessary in a pre-recorded New Year's video message released on Tuesday. The Turkish leader reiterated that he described as the dawn of a new era in neighboring Syria and said the establishment of stability would lead to the return of millions of refugees who have been living in Turkey. Turkey has taken in more Syrian refugees more than any other nation, more than 3.8 million at its peak in 2022, or roughly 60% of all the Syrian lodged by UN Refugees Agency UNHCR. Erdogan said his support and his country's full support in bolstering economic prosperity and peace in Syria will continue. Listen in.
2024 senesinin son haftaları köklü tarihi, beşeri ve komşuluk ilişkilerimizin bulunduğu Suriye'de yeni bir dönemin kıvılcımı oldu. Yeni dönemin Suriye'de kalıcı barışa, huzura, istikrara ve ekonomik refaha kapı aralaması için gereken her türlü desteği sağlayacağız. Suriye'de istikrar ortamı kök saldıkça inanıyorum ki 13 yıldır vatan hasreti çeken Suriyeli muhacirlerin gönüllü geri dönüşü de kolaylaşacaktır.
A new virus is taking over the US, the Norovirus. The country is seeing a surge in Norovirus outbreaks across the country, according to the US Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Cases of the highly contagious stomach bug have been rising recently since early December, with a noticeable spike in the number of outbreaks compared to previous years. Norovirus is notorious for causing sudden vomiting and diarrhea, and it is highly contagious, often spreading quickly in environments where people are in close proximity. In the first week of December, the CDC reported 91 outbreaks of norovirus, a significant increase from the 69 outbreaks recorded the week before in late November. Now, even as the world welcomes 2025, the echoes of the COVID-19 pandemic still resonate across nations. The World Health Organization, 5 years after the outbreak, is still waiting for the crucial data it says it needed to understand the origins of the virus that reshaped the globe. On Monday, the WHO issued an urgent appeal to China, calling for transparency and access to vital information that could unlock the mystery of how COVID-19 first emerged. It emphasized that without transparency and cooperation, the world risks being caught off guard by future generations. But China's response on Tuesday was swift and defiant. The country's foreign ministry insisted they had already shared crucial information with the world, including the viral gene sequence early on in the pandemic, and they dismissed any claims of withholding any data with them. Yet, despite China's claims, the questions persist. While most scientists agree the virus originated in Wuhan, the origin remains shrouded in uncertainty. For months, the world believed the virus likely spread from animals to humans at a local wet market. But speculation about a possible lab leak has never died down. Fueled by high-profile voices, including former President Donald Trump, the WHO sent a team to Wuhan in 2021 to investigate both the wet market and the controversial lab. But their findings offered no definitive answers. The global search for the truth is far from over. For now, the world waits for data, for answers, and for the transparency that could prevent another crisis. Sarah McBride had made history at the Delaware State Senate as the first openly transgender state senator in the country. Now, she is making history again. The 34-year-old U.S. Republican-elect will be sworn in as the first openly transgender member in Congress on Jan 3. The Democrats' political victory comes during a reckoning for transgender rights and after an election filled with campaign ads and politicians demeaning trans people. But McBride still easily won her blue state's only seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. The 2024 was a year marked by elections around the world. Roughly 70 countries headed to the ballots, with some re-electing incumbent governments and others signaling a desire for change. From Narendra Modi coming back to power for a historic third term to Donald Trump's forceful comeback as the 47th president of the US, here is a look at a few significant elections from around the world.
"2024, a year filled with political turmoil, a year of political decisions that will shape nations for decades to come. 2024 was a tumultuous year for global democracy, where a fifth of the world's population from over 70 countries headed to the ballot box. While the US saw a fiercely contested race, Europe saw a swing to the right, with far-right parties such as Marine Le Pen's National Rally emerging in the European Union polls. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka, in its first election since recovering from a financial crisis, elected its first left-leaning president. 2024 was not the year for the incumbents. Voters across the globe made their voice clear. Their message, "You're fired." From the US to Sri Lanka, Japan, France and Britain, voters tired of economic disruption and global instability rejected sitting governments and even turned to disruptive outsiders. Here's a look at some of the key elections that transformed global politics. Let's start somewhere closer home, with India. India, the largest democracy in the world and the most populous, saw Prime Minister Narendra Modi return to power for a historic third term. With the Bharatiya Janata Party-led NDA coalition securing the majority in the general elections, although with a smaller margin. Meanwhile, regional parties shone on the national stage under the India bloc. Asia saw several other crucial elections. While dynasties influenced some, many rejected the old guard. Pakistan, where despite populist leader Imran Khan being behind bars, his party, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, won the most seats in the elections. However, after weeks of turmoil, ultimately the Pakistan Muslim League N formed the government with Shehbaz Sharif as Prime Minister. Yet in a curveball, Sri Lanka picked left-leaning National People's Party leader Anura Kumara Dissanayake as its next president, rejecting all its traditional picks. In Europe, several countries including France and UK saw the far right emerge victorious this election season. June's parliamentary elections in the 27-member European Union saw conservative populists and far-right factions challenging the ruling parties in France and Germany, the bloc's most prominent and influential nations. Meanwhile, UK's July election saw the Conservatives ousted with 14 years in office as the Labour Party swept to power in a landslide. Yet, voter turnout was at a record low in 20 years. Struggling from an economic and healthcare crisis, the country saw an emergence of the hard right party Reform UK, led by Nigel Farage. In France too, Marine Le Pen's national rally grew stronger, despite not being able to secure a majority. A wave of anti-incumbency also swept Africa. From South Africa to Senegal, Ghana and Botswana, all saw incumbents who have been in power for decades defeated. The most significant amongst them, the collapse of the African National Congress in South Africa. The party, once headed by Nelson Mandela, lost its majority for the first time since the end of apartheid, forcing it into a coalition with opposition parties. Meanwhile, amid wars, both Iran and Russia held polls. Iran, in a surprise move, elected a reformist president, Masoud Pezeshkian, after the death of former President Ibrahim Raisi, while Russian President Putin cemented his tight grip on power with 6 more years. However, the year's most consequential election was yet to come. After a fierce fight against Vice President Kamala Harris on everything from abortion, immigration to the economy, Donald Trump secured a landslide victory in November's US presidential elections, leaving the world on the edge for what the unpredictable America First leader will do in his second term at the White House. From his tariff threats against Canada, Mexico and India, to threatening to buy the Panama Canal and Greenland, Trump has also set the ball going.
It seems democracy's bumpy ride will continue well into 2025, with many more incumbents put to the test. From Germany's Olaf Scholz to Canada's Justin Trudeau, all heading to crucial elections where far-right opposition parties are already being favoured by the voters. All eyes will be on the voters to see what they decide. Disha Bagchi for NDTV.
From Sydney to Mumbai to Nairobi, communities around the world began welcoming 2025 with spectacular light shows, embraces and ice plunges. New Zealand and Australia welcomed the New Year 2025 with vibrant celebrations and spectacular fireworks display. Thousands gathered to witness the dazzling fireworks as the world marked another rotation around the sun. Here are the glimpses of the world celebrating New Year. Take a look and a very happy New Year.